colleagues introduce themselves.
I'm Jennifer Morgan. I'm a resident in counseling.
I'm Jenay. I'm also a resident in counseling.
So you have the information in the booklet, but just so that we're clear about where we are and what we're talking about, we're talking about dream monsters and nightmares, and how we're integrating DreamWork, BodyWork. So I'll get to the outline here in a minute. So we know that everyone dreams, and how many of you have had clients who want to talk about their dreams? At some point or another, it comes up. How many of you have had training in DreamWork, specific training in DreamWork? It's not in any graduate program these days. So you had some. Where did you?
The bonding method has got it in.
Bonding method, awesome, that's great. But it doesn't happen in programs these days. So our intention is to help you start to conceptualize how to work with dreams with clients. We're going to talk about sources of nightmares. We're going to talk about what DreamWorks BodyWork is. We'll do an exercise here in the first hour. We've got a worksheet that you'll be able to take home and use with clients as well. We'll talk just a little bit about theories of dreams, and then some techniques. So we've kind of got it divided into two chunks. This first chunk, first hour, is more information, and the second chunk is much more activity. Not that those of you, the first hour will have a couple of activities. So this is intended to be experiential and not just informational. Is that okay with you all? We have an 18-page handout for you. I hate death by PowerPoint, so it's roughly equivalent to what the information is on the PowerPoint slides, so you're not going to miss anything. There should be some places for you to take notes. So again, I'm Dr. Suzan Thompson. I'm currently in private practice. I have been a full-time faculty member at Benjamin University. I started out as an adjunct and then worked for 9 years as the clinical coordinator in ODU's graduate counseling program. So I have master's students and doc students all over the place. I have a couple of them here. So thanks for coming anyway. Right? And I'm going to let my colleagues let you know what their work experience is just a little bit, and then we'll jump right in, and we'll ask a couple questions about you as well. So,
All right. Well, earlier I introduced myself. I'm Jennifer Morgan. I'm a resident under Dr. Thompson. I've done a wide range of things. I started out in EAP doing that type of work, and I've worked in inpatient with adults. I've worked inpatient with kids at Thompson with Jenay, and right now I'm the clinical coordinator for Intercept Youth. So I'm kind of supervising in-home services in mental health skills building. And in addition to that, I also do private practice with Dr. Thompson, and in that I do work mostly with adults, and I do EMDR and lots of different work there. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Thanks.
Okay. And again, I'm Jenay. I also kind of have a variety of experiences. I started out working with the homeless population, doing like in-home stuff, and then I also transitioned to therapeutic day treatment and also doing assessments for the children in the therapeutic day treatment. I've also done some work in shelters, and I've also, currently I work at Kempsville. I work for our partial hospitalization program that they have there, which is kind of like inpatient, but it's more of an outpatient, but it's another sector of Kempsville. And I do assessments, and I also do group therapy there. So I actually do my dream work in the group setting, and I also have experience working at local community services boards with adults and adolescents.
I like that breath. Isn't that good? Right. So who are you? What's your background? Just how about how many are students? We'll start with students. This is so exciting. How many of you are in private practice? Awesome, thank you. How many of you are school counselors? Have been? Okay. How about residential treatment center? Okay. Who am I leaving out?
Retired.
Retired.
College counseling.
College counseling, thank you. Yeah.
CSB system.
CSB, private non, yes.
No, same thing.
Say CSB as well. Didn't you raise your hand as a student too?
I want to.
Okay. Where else?
We did the CSB.
CSB too.
Yeah.
That's great.
Clinical supervisors.
Clinical supervisors. So also a breadth, right? And thank you VCA for bringing us all together. So I asked the question before, how many of you have worked with clients who talk about dreams? And most of you have raised your hands. How many of you have had training in DreamWork? And only one person raised their hand. So students, this is a great foundation for you to get started working with clients who want to talk about dreams. Just what are you hoping to get from this session today? Let us know. We'll make sure to fit in some things if they're not already here. What made you come today?
Symbolism.
Symbolism. Okay. How about others?
Night terrors.
Night terrors. Yeah.
How it helps clients process their dreams.
Great. Okay. So we'll be talking about some theories of dream work and really a different way of working with dreams that isn't really in the literature. So you get to have a special training today. I do want to, here's the caveat, here's the ethical and legal sort of disclaimer as well. Just remember that when you are starting to apply a new technique with your clients, you need to let them know where you're coming from. This is a workshop, right? It's not a formal training. So let clients know that you don't have formal training, you like working with dreams, you have some new information, that's informed consent, right? So if you like this, then get some more training in working with dreams. And then here's our personal disclaimers. We're not dream experts. I'm still learning. And I've been studying with Jean Campbell, who has been working with dreams, and actually she's been on the executive board for the International Association for the Study of Dreams, which is one of the resources in the back of the handout for you, because that's an awesome conference. If you really like dreams, these are people who are only talking about dreams, and it's cutting edge. So their last conference was in a castle in Europe. And I think they go to Europe once every 3 years or something like that. I missed it. But the next time it will be in the US. I think it might be out in California next time. So we haven't really been tracking our dreams for years and years. How many of you have tracked your dreams? Okay, great. So that's like a third of you there. How many of you are lucid dreamers? That's awesome. What I'm hearing more and more is there are more and more people who are lucid dreamers. So I'm not really going to talk much about lucid dreaming, but how many of you know what lucid dreaming is? So not everybody. Lucid dreaming is you know when you're dreaming that you're dreaming. Okay? Which means that you can manipulate your dream. You can change your dream. It means a lot of other things too, but I think that's the coolest thing. I think I've had over the years just a couple of lucid dreams, but there's a lot more information about lucid dreaming out there too. How about nightmares? You know, we talked about this before. I don't usually have nightmares. How are you? Last time I had a major nightmare was actually years ago. But I will tell you this. You know, when you start talking about dreams, the dreams start coming. And I don't know if you've ever done a dream incubation, which means that you actually tell yourself, I want to have a dream. This is what I've done for the last 3 nights. I want to have a dream. I want it to be really clearly understood. I want to wake up knowing what my dream was. Because they're so intangible, right? So here we're talking about dream monsters, nightmares. And the dream I had last night, I won't go into it very far. You're laughing because she already knows, was my ex-husband showed up in my dream. It wasn't a nightmare though, so that's know that everyone dreams, right? Everyone dreams. And we also know that if people aren't dreaming, there's a lot of reasons for that. But everyone dreams. An average person has 4 to 6 dreams each night. But we tend to forget, look at this percentage, 95 to 99% of those dreams. I like seeing dreams as a portal. So I'll talk about portal in a minute. But I wanted to get into the activity before we kind of, right after lunch, have you asleep here. Although that might be an interesting presentation too. So here's what I would like for you to do right now. And this is the difference between talking about dreams and then DreamWork BodyWork. So right now, think about how do you normally stand? Just think about how you normally stand. Okay, think about it. I'm going to turn this down. I think we're off. Okay. Got that? Okay. So stand up. How do you stand? How do you stand when you are your best self? And how does that feel? So some of you can answer, or just kind of think about it right now. Just notice, how does that feel? And what if you thought about a dream character? A character in your dream. Okay? So nod your head when you've got a dream character. Most of you are nodding. Stand like that character. Notice how you're standing now. The body's bringing you information. Yeah, how do you stand now, right? So you pick different characters. How do you stand now? So go back to how you stand when you're your best self. And now, again, that same character from your dream. Stand like that character. What do you notice? How do you feel when you stand from that character's perspective? What do you notice? And now, are you ready for this? What if you move around? So we're going to just do it for about a minute. Move around from that character's perspective, okay? Stay in character and just move around a little bit. You can move around in a small spot, you can move around the room, however you want to, for just about a minute, so that you can feel how that character feels. Everybody's worried about moving around. What is that? It doesn't move. And some of you are interacting with other characters. And stand again. What do you notice? There's some great movement here.
I have a really hard time because I only dream about work.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
So I'm myself in my dream.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
Me
Well,
too.
okay. So just notice that. So what's happening in your dream is the same thing that's happening at work. Is it the same?
Pretty much. It's
Okay.
more confusing.
Okay. So what else did you notice? You can have a seat if you
An alignment
want. An alignment.
with self and character.
With yourself and your character, you felt it coming together, right?
Peace.
And some peace that came with that. How about others?
Mine was a little uncomfortable because it wasn't a good dream.
So you chose a character from a challenging dream.
So it just didn't feel, I felt weird.
Okay. How about others?
Powerful.
Powerful.
Expansive.
And we saw that. Well done. Anybody else?
I felt happy, even though other people felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I just felt happy.
Okay, so you chose a character that actually helped to bring that up.
Yeah.
Okay. How about others? Yeah.
So, what came up for me was the Jolly Green Giant. But, and for me, that's a combination of, sort of, happiness and protectiveness. Yeah, I mean, that stance of kinda, and, you know, just kinda happy and, you know, I'm gonna look over things, you know, look out for things.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kinda, I didn't go any further with that, but that's how it felt.
So you might get some more information about that character if you stand longer in that character. What did you notice the difference between your dream character and when I first asked you to stand up or to stand? What did you notice a difference? Yeah.
How I present myself, I don't think is the same as maybe how I see myself. Yeah, I think it was pretty powerful for me. It was painful to stand the way my character was.
Okay.
Not, I mean, like, it didn't become emotional for me, maybe because we just did it, but I was like, this is not, I can't be this kind of smaller, which is what character that I chose, just
Yeah.
because it was the way
I can't continue to be this.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So those insights start to come.
Yeah.
All right. And that insight might have been different had you just talked about your dream. So the symbolism then that happens in dreams becomes embodied when we start moving and embody the character of our dream. So that was this little snippet, a small snippet. And you might ask your client to say, pick a character in your dream. Just pick one character. And stand like that character. And what do you notice? Pretty simple, isn't it? And pretty powerful. Other things that you noticed? Yeah.
I noticed that mostly in my dreams, that I'm mostly confused in my dreams, so the character that I chose was really confused, and I didn't notice that until I started moving as a character in my dream.
And then the other pieces started dropping in around, oh, this is
Yeah.
really familiar.
And then I realized that other dreams were very similar to that.
Okay. And again, that was an easy, isn't that interesting? That was only about a minute. Look at that insight. Pretty cool, isn't it? So I see dreams as this doorway. A doorway to healing. And by the way, the research supports this over and over. We don't have to talk to people about their anxiety, or we can talk to them about their dreams. And it helps with healing anyway. So I like playing with words here. Is it a portal or is it a porthole? I live close to the beach, so it's another opening, right? An opening between worlds, an opening between land and sea, and there's a lot of symbolism that happens, I think, not just I think, it happens in dreams. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of dreams as we lead more into dream work and dream interpretation.
wanna stand here or, over here and?
Here and, so just that, right here? Alright, I can do that. Alright, so I'm going to start just to let you know I'm not a historian, but I am going to talk about kind of some different ancient cultures and kind of how they perceived and used dreams. Because, you know, as human beings, we have been fascinated about our dreams for millennia. And so I just wanted to kind of touch on, and you're going to see this evolution of kind of this external belief about dreams and kind of what they, and how cultures use them, and then kind of more of an internalized use of dreams, and kind of how we've used them and honored our dreams over time. So here, so we can kind of look at this. So in ancient Babylonian, they had a very simplistic view of dreams. So if a dream was good, it came from the gods. If it was bad, it came from demons. So very simple, kind of in how they used it. And even back in, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the poem, the Epic of Gilgamesh, that was written around 2100 BC, so 4,000 years ago. They even, the author even wrote about dream interpretation in that, where Gilgamesh's mother interpreted a dream for him that had this meaning and that he'd be this great warrior. And then back in ancient Egypt, there was, in the research kind of shows that there was hieroglyphics of the ancient priests kind of looking at dream interpretation. That's kind of one of the jobs that they did. And the hieroglyphics showed the actual discussion of the dream and then the interpretation of the dream itself. And then we kind of moved to Rome. Ancient Rome believed that dreams were messages from God, the gods. And so this is kind of that externalizing, like so dreams come from, you know, God or some kind of gods. And then there was a message on what to do with the dream. Then we look at ancient Greece. And Greeks would actually kind of take a ritualistic view with dreams. And they would purify themselves for a couple of days, choose what temple to go to because they were wanting to seek some kind of message from that specific god. They would go to the temple and sleep and kind of hope that Morpheus, the god of dreams, would come to them and reveal something to them about what their future. And then also, if you kind of think back from the Iliad and the Odyssey, and that was written around that 1200 BC, Homer, in his stories, kind of talked about dream interpretation too, like with Penelope and so. Okay. So then in the 2nd century AD, so this is more, I guess, in this 2,000 years ago, there was one of the first books on the interpretation of dreams, and that was written by the Greek author Artemidorus, and he wrote about interpreting dreams and the metaphoric meaning. I reviewed earlier, kind of wanting to talk about that. And Freud, later on, actually even references this book in part of some of his work that he did at sort of Yale. And then we can look at the ancient Assyrians, and they saw dreams as an omen. So again, that external, like from the gods, telling us something, and that nightmares meant there was something wrong. And I think kind of even with our clients, we're like, it's a really bad dream. Right? What do you think it means? Do you think something bad is going to happen to me? And so they kind of took that viewpoint, and they would actually try to even follow whatever the message was in the dream and kind of make decisions regarding what they dreamt about. So kind of switching over to some different cultures. So we have ancient Islam, and there was even some writings there about dream interpretation, and that the use of a Muslim scholar was who you would go to talk about your dreams. And even in that, there was a discussion on just the etiquette of dream interpretation for the scholars and how to explore that with the seeker. And then in the 16th century, there's some even writings about dream interpretation in China. And that focus was more on the awareness of, are you awake or are you in a dream state? So there was a lot of writing about that in the lofty principles of dream interpretation. So then we get to the more modern, you guys all know Freud and Jung, right? Probably even more than I do. So Freud, let's talk about Freud for a minute. So in 1913, he wrote this big book, The Interpretation of Dreams. And I think there's been some edits to it, and there's actually a briefer version that he wrote later on that was a little bit more user-friendly. And Freud believed, or part of it, believed that dreams were an attempt of the unconscious to resolve conflict. Remember the wish fulfillment that you learned in Psych 101? He kind of talked about that. So he kind of talked about that there was the preconscious had this sensor, right? And that wouldn't allow the subconscious material that we were so the sensor of the preconscious, so that the images were distorted and kind of bizarre. And he also wrote that nightmares were the result of a failed dream work. And then he kind of used some free associations and different techniques to interpret dreams. And then we have Jung. Sure, all of you have talked about Jung before. So he didn't dismiss Freud's idea of wish fulfillment, but he had kind of a much broader idea of kind of dreams and kind of what they meant for the person. Remember the kind of the collective unconscious. I'm sure you've all heard of that, collective conscious. So he proposed two approaches to dream work: subjective and objective analyzation of the material. So objective is that the everyone in the dream is who they are. So if I dreamt about my husband, he would be my husband, right? And then subjective would be everyone in the dream is just part of me. So if I dreamt about my husband, it's really just a part of me in there. He also wrote about kind of the manifestation of the animus, animum, and the shadow in dreams. And even though there's so much symbolism that he talked about, he also cautioned against generalizing a generic meaning to those symbols, because there had to be a personal connection to the symbol. He expressed that symbols in dreams must have some kind of personal meaning to the individual. Okay, so Freud also kind of talked about that dreams changed when a person experienced trauma, and I'm sure that for you, when you're working with your clients, this has come up for them, and you've seen that those who have a trauma history, their dreams are going to be a little different. There's going to be different kind of material that's in there. And Carl Jung, again, kind of the collective unconscious that we talked about. He believed that the collective unconscious was the combined knowledge of all humankind. And again, another kind of porthole that Dr. Thompson talked about earlier. Dreams not only propose problems, but they also bring solutions. That's something that we can really focus on, that positiveness when we work with our clients. That working and doing some dream work can kind of really open up the door to what's going on for the client, and maybe some ideas on where to go next with whatever they're bringing to you. Okay. So we started earlier talking about the history of cultures in dream work, and that there is that external, like getting messages from the gods, and then kind of more internal, like Freud and Jung. And then we're going to talk about the biological aspect of dreams. So this is, I believe she's Scandinavian. These two scientists, they believe that dreams are just actually a biological function of instinctual behavior. And what that means is that the brain at night, when you're sleeping, is just practicing different problems. So practicing, threats to self. So when you have a dream like you're running away from some scary monster, your brain is just practicing taking care of yourself. Threats to family. So if you dream that your child was kidnapped or something horrible happened to a family member, it's just your brain working it out, practicing any kind of threat. Or like reproduction, just those kind of dreams, just your brain practicing. That there is actually no like psychological reason to have these dreams. They don't need to be interpreted. They don't really mean anything other than just practice. So that's kind of that range. So what do you guys think of that? So this kind of external ideas all the way to this very biological idea that it's nothing.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, that's a lot different. And I thought it would be kind of just interesting to hear that way, because it's just so different than kind of what we think about with dream work and dream interpretation. Any questions about any of that or thoughts? Go ahead.
So there's one, I remember reading back a few years ago, I cannot remember what it was called, the theory. It's something like cognitive integration or something like that. It's basically, as you're going through your REM cycle,
kind of working it out.
Your brain is not actively solving problems, but everything's firing because your brain's hitting reset for the night.
Right.
And then your conscious mind is just trying to make sense of all these brain firings and interprets them as a dream.
Right. So that's that kind of working it out, the daily stressors and different things that have happened that day. Yeah. That's
Sure.
kind
Which
of
is what, yeah.
and that's kind of more modern too. That's kind of more modern, maybe the past 20, 30 years or so. Yeah. All right. Any other comments? Go ahead.
I went to a workshop by Clara Hill. She's at the University of Maryland, and she's written books on working with dreams with clients. And it was a sort of cognitive, experiential model.
Okay.
Where you examine the dream for what it might be telling you. So it's sort of like a blend of Jung and the kind of idea that dreams do mean something.
Right, right. That's
Well, it just crosses all, I mean, timelines
Well,
and,
right.
and approaches and theories, so dreams have been paid attention to.
right, yeah, for
Forever and
forever. And and now we're just kind of touching the surface kind of cultures. I think that could be an entire graduate level class. If we could go way, way back, and kind of the use of that. But you're right, this kind of broad spectrum of how people use it and honor it in their lives. So very good. All right.
So with this information, we wanted to kind of prime the pump for you to say, oh, I'm interested in that. Let me find out more about that. There are a lot of folks out there who use Jungian ways of interpreting dreams, and that's actually how I started too. Jung is full of symbols and symbolism. I love symbols. I do some artwork myself, and so there's all kinds of things that we learn about ourselves just by looking at symbols. One of the things that I usually say to clients when they say, well, I looked in this dream book, or I looked online to see what that symbol was, first thing I'm going to throw it all away. In fact, somebody came in to just say hi to me and said that very thing. I was like, just throw it away. Just throw it away. You don't need it. Because really, this is the level of, it's personal. It's truly personal when it comes to working with dreams. What I wanted to do is touch on some different things for you too, so that as you take this information and start working with clients, then you have some anchors, you have some tools to work with. Is that okay with you all? So if I say, here's some, how do you remember your dreams? You already heard me say I did a kind of a dream incubation. And my dream incubation is, I actually said it. Did you hear it? I said, I want to have a dream tonight. I want it to be really clear. I don't like those confusing dreams that take me forever to try and figure out. I want it to be really clear, and I want it to be succinct, and I want to understand it at the end when I wake up. I want to remember it when I wake up. So all of those different aspects. So this says, go to bed when you feel sleepy. You remember your dreams best when you had a good night's sleep. I actually went to bed a little bit earlier last night than I have been the rest of this week. Before you go to bed, you can say, tonight I'm going to have wonderful dreams. When I wake up in the morning, I'm going to remember my dreams. This is in your handout too, by the way. Keep a dream journal. I brought my dream journal with me. I haven't had a chance to write down that ex-husband dream yet. But I will. And frequently, it's right in that slight awake state that you start to remember your dream. And that's why you want a dream journal right at your fingertips, with a pen or pencil right handy so that you can jot some notes. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, you can jot some notes. So that can be helpful for you to remember in the future. And by the way, the more you start talking about the dreams, the more you'll start remembering dreams too. Anybody had that experience? So here it says, wake up in the morning, stay in bed for a little bit. While you remember your dreams, you might just don't make that quick transition. Allow yourself to make a slow transition. And then sharing it with somebody almost right after. So if you've got somebody who you can call on your way to work or whenever you're able to, like, I had this dream last night, then that also helps. It helps, again, to prime the pump for us to begin to remember. I walk my dog every morning. And it's not unusual for me to not remember a dream when I'm awake, when I just wake up. So it's pretty typical. I do use a double negative. Let me use a positive. It's typical of me to remember a dream when I'm walking my dog because something in my environment triggers a memory that's related to my dream. So to me, that really has been helpful. So pretty simple technique. And then understand there are lots of different kinds of dreams. I talked about lucid dreaming before, but there are adventure dreams. Anybody have adventure dreams? Those are my absolute favorite. Dreams where you learn, there's that rehearsal. Like, how many of you went to school recently in your dreams? That was actually part of my dream last night too. The lucid dreams, you're aware when you're dreaming. Magical dreams. How many of you have ever had dreams where you're flying? That's a really common dream. Or where you're bigger or smaller, or oh, somebody said Jolly Green Giant back there. That's a kind of magical dream as well. And then nightmares, where you're chased by monsters. That was one of my introductions to doing more dream work. I had an LPC supervision group several years ago. Okay, in '98. That's a few years ago. And we invited somebody, we had started talking about dreams, and we invited somebody to come who had a dream group, and she talked about dreams. And somebody asked, what about nightmares? And a whole new world opened to me when we started talking about nightmares. So that's part of the reason I wanted to have this kind of presentation, because people very often don't want to talk about nightmares. You notice that? Because they're scary to start out with, and they're often a challenge to understand. And then we mentioned before, practice dreams, problem-solving dreams, vacation dreams. How about other ones that aren't on this list? Yeah.
Searching.
Seeking dreams, where you're searching for something. Yeah. Yeah.
Being lost dream. I don't know. It comes close to a nightmare because you're in the wrong place and you know it.
Yeah.
Well, my common dream is I'm about to walk into a classroom. I had a lot of graduate school. And I realize it's a course I never attended one class even.
Right.
And this is final exam.
Anybody have that one? Yeah, so there are some common dreams then too, right? Do you hear the themes? Did you have, yeah.
What about sleep paralysis? Because that sometimes falls in between.
Yeah, sleep paralysis is a whole other graduate class too. So what do you know about sleep paralysis?
Well, I know that a lot of times people will see shadows, hear things, similar things too as if they're dreaming, but can't typically move anything.
It's absolutely frightening. It's terrifying. There's some links to trauma with sleep paralysis, surprise. And typically in sleep paralysis, people literally cannot move. And it can be a sign of some really serious issues that are happening with a person too. So, yeah.
What about in the instances where you're like acting out your dream, like you're moving around while you're dreaming?
Say that. Say more.
Yeah, like sleepwalking, but you're almost like acting out whatever's happening in your dream instead of just staying in bed and having your dream.
So I think what you mean is, because I've had these where I'm dreaming that I've gotten up, I've woken up, I'm walking around my house or whatever, and I'm really still asleep. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. How common is that? Anybody have those kinds of dreams? So what do you want to make of those? We can say it's a dream. We can call it a rehearsal. We can call it any number of things then too. So it's a pretty common kind of thing. Is it that I don't really want to wake up, or I'm really eager to wake up? It's all kinds of different ways that you can look at it.
What about the dreams where you wake up and crying? I don't know if anybody else has those, but I've had them.
Thank you for saying that, because one of the things that you really want to focus on. What about dreams where you wake up crying? Here's another how to help people work with dreams. One of the first questions I want to encourage you to ask is, how did you feel? Right? So you wake up crying, you don't remember your dream? Okay, so how does it feel to just cry? That's a start, right? How many of you have clients who won't even allow themselves to cry? I've got a few of those. And then here's that waking sleep part. When else do you want to cry? So that's one way to look at it. So there's another technique right there that you can use.
I've had dreams too sometimes that would be considered, and I was just looking there in the lucid dreams part. I thought, well, no, I don't do that much, but I've had dreams that, and if I remember and describe them, they would say, well, it was a nightmare, it wasn't a dream, it was a nightmare. But I don't wake up that way, so I'm just wondering if at some point in that dream is bad, I'm saying, well, I know the dreams, we'll get to them up here, I'd just be over and try to go back to sleep for a while. Or or what it is, but, I had a dream recently, I don't remember anything else about it or how it happened, but I had a cut here and the blood was red and it was dripping, and I'm concerned about that. But I wasn't panicked about it, I didn't wake up like, oh, this was horrible, I didn't wake up with awful feeling about the dream that I had. I don't have bad dreams often, but I have had some that most people would look and say, well, that, you know, was your heart pounding, were you upset when you woke up, were you scared? And
So there's information right there too. How do you feel when you wake up from this kind of what would be seen as disturbing dream? I'm not going to interpret it for you.
No,
We're just
go
going
ahead. Figure it out.
Yes, but if you what would happen if you were to just work with that? Whatever the dream part is, work with it. So some tips, I already said, throw away the dream books. Dreams are personal. They're full of symbols and imagery and messages. One of the approaches that I use with folks is I say, start your own dream dictionary. Start your own dream dictionary. It's your symbol. So what does a house mean to you? I know what it means to me, but what does it mean to you? So as counselors, it's important for us to not interpret the dream, right?
They want you to.
They want you to. It's easy. It's like, I don't understand what this means.
It's so simple.
I see what it means,
exactly.
but do you see there's a different level of aha when a client gets to it themselves. So then I would say, if you're wanting to interpret your client's dreams, how much more work are you wanting to do for them? I'm sorry, that was my faculty. How much work, right? How much work are you doing for your clients? That's too much. So another basic strategy is to tell and retell a dream. Focus on the affect. Focus on different dream elements. Create a personal dream dictionary. By the way, all of this is in your handout. Please understand the dreamer knows best. Please don't try and interpret, because interpretation is projection. You know, it's your symbol that you see. Now, I think as counselors, as the outsider looking in, we're making connections really faster, right? Sometimes, but look at how meaningful it is when you have that big aha yourself. That's grounded aha, as opposed to an outside aha. Does that make sense to you all? I see heads shaking. You're welcome to say, well, just for my dream, or based on what I've seen for you, I wonder if. But yeah.
So how bad is it? What I sometimes say is, you know, some people believe that everything in your dream is somehow yourself, and I leave it there.
Yeah.
Is that awful?
No, that's one way to look at dreams, right? That's a Jungian way to look at dreams.
Yeah, which is what I kind of know. So,
Sure. It's not awful. There are lots of different ways. You just saw that. There are lots of different ways to look at dreams. That's one, and that's certainly a way that I learned too. How does that part of your dream represent you as well? I learned that there are different levels also of dream symbols. I don't have a slide for that. One is your personal, like what does a dog mean to you? What does a house mean to you? But then there's also, here's what Jung brought to it. What's the milieu, like around you? In our geographic area, my geographic area, I live near I live in Virginia Beach, so water has a particular meaning. But then we look at the collective unconscious, and water means something else to all of us. There are common elements that start to happen in terms of symbolism. So another really simple way of helping people with their dreams is just to ask them to tell it again, tell it again. What do they notice when they tell it the first time? And what's interesting is that telling a dream the first time and telling it a second time, usually you'll get more information. Telling it a second time to a third time, you get even more information. And then let's add an element, pick a character in your dream and just stand like that character. And what would happen if you moved around like that character? Now we're combining a couple of different strategies that can be useful as you're working with dreams. Make sense? Easy. I like easies. simple. So you turn it over to the client. You get to be a facilitator.
Oh, what about, you know, when I know this was past, I'm sorry, kind of going back, but, have you ever had a dream, which I've done this a couple times, and it would be like everyday life, you know, you dream it, and it's like it's happened, but it's not happened yet, and then like a couple days later, your dream won't come true.
What would you call that kind of dream? It wasn't on the list, was it?
No, that's why I was like, I should have thought of that.
What a premonition.
Yeah.
It's a premonitory dream.
Yeah.
So now we're getting into how dreams are an altered state, as is intuition. And dreams bring to us more information than our conscious living brings us. So it's not unusual. My friend Jean, who I'm still learning about DreamWork, BodyWork, she has this beautiful blend of, she used to have a psychic development. How do you really develop your psychic ability? And a big, huge piece of her training program was keeping track of dreams. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people who will have premonitory dreams. The one major lucid dream that I had was also premonitory. It was a very interesting dream. I was looking for a clock and a calendar in my dream, so I knew what day it was that the dream was happening, that whatever was happening in the dream. So I found the date, and on that date, 6 months later, a significant event happened in my life. Interesting.
I guess I go and question, like, I've seen this online a lot and studying this stuff, and I read that more people dream in black and white. I find that I don't. Is that true for most people? Is that true for you guys?
So here's what my friend Jean would say. When people first started talking about dreams, really, in our culture, it was around the time where TVs were started. So what color was, what color? Black and white.
Mm-hmm.
So how many of you have dreams that are in full color? So look around the room. It's everybody in this room.
Yeah, I do sepia too. Weird, ain't it?
You have a very rich dream life then. Yeah.
Well, colors like symbols are often from the collective unconscious, that they represent a certain thing to our psyche that,
Yes.
that have really strong meaning.
So you're the one that's been trained in the Bonnie method.
Mhm.
So
And the
you've
circles
got
of self, which
yeah.
is a
So
psychological assessment using colors and symbols.
awesome. That's great.
Really great.
So now we have another piece of information that you can bring into your work with people who are bringing their dreams in with you. But that Bonnie method
like what does color mean to you? What does that color represent?
So that's a great strategy. If you think in terms of counseling skills. So the next hour we'll be talking about counseling skills that are involved with really good dream work with folks. And that's one of the skills, is asking a very simple question. What does that mean to you? Not to me, but to you. And helping people to see the different levels of dream symbolism.
So you're talking about something that's like really happened. A client of mine dreams all the time about when she was with an abusive stepfather. So he's in her dreams, and it's what happened, and she keeps having this dream, and she wakes up terrified, just like it was.
Right.
So with that, I mean, is that just she's processing it, and eventually it's going to be okay?
A beautiful question. Jenay is going to talk a little bit about.
There's nothing to interpret necessarily. It is what it is.
So
it's not.
I don't even know if I have a slide. So the DSM, right? Our great manual. When we look at the criteria for trauma, right? It's nightmares. So isn't it interesting that we have something that is really significant to people, trauma, and one of the hallmark criteria is nightmares, but we're not talking to people about their nightmares. So somebody was talking about then, you were the one that said that in terms of the biological aspects. So another hallmark of trauma is people don't sleep well. So they keep getting interrupted, their completion. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jenay, because I'm seeing what time it is now. Can we buy like 3 minutes from you? Is it okay if we go a little bit over? And then make sure you get a good enough break? Okay, so go Jenay.
Stand this side. Okay, so Dr. Thompson kind of covered that one, and a little bit of this, so I'll.
Oh, just repeat it, it's okay.
Okay, well, I'll turn to this one. Great, all right. So, I know, how many of you guys feel like when someone says, if you ask them, oh, how have you been sleeping, if you had a nightmare, how many of you guys know what to do with it? Or do you kind of like panic and it's just kind of like, okay, let's check that box. You had a nightmare and let's kind of move on. Am I the only one? But as I mentioned, I do assessments. And it wasn't until I started working, I worked with foster care and adoption for about 1.5 years. And those are probably the most traumatic experiences that I had to kind of live through with the clients. So it was a lot of, and I worked with younger adolescents, so there was a lot of nightmares and I can't sleep and I can't do this and that, but no one was doing anything with it. And I think that kind of sparked my interest in DreamWork, and it made me realize how much of the trauma that we are not helping them heal through because we just kind of check the box, oh, you're having nightmares, okay, well, let's move on, what else is going on? So one of the things that research shows is that nightmares kind of decrease when there's trauma-focused treatment. I know personally, I used to have a lot of nightmares when I had a lot of unresolved stuff going on. And once I worked through that, then I really don't have as many nightmares. Using imagery rehearsal, so changing the endings of the dream to something that's a lot less upsetting also reduces nightmares. I'll tell kind of one quick experience. When I started doing my DreamWork, which was only maybe a few months ago. So recently that I've just started working into this. I had a kid who, I do DreamWork in a group setting. So I'm nervous because it's something new, and then we're also in a group setting. So when we talk about nightmares, I often worry about having a client unpack all of this heavy material in the hour that I have with them with 9 other kids around, and then how am I gonna pack it back up so they can kind of function for the rest of the day. So I'm always nervous when someone brings up a nightmare. I kind of freak out. I'm like, oh, well, I try to steer them away. The first couple of times I tried to steer them away from it because it made me uncomfortable because I didn't know what was gonna happen. But I had them just draw a dream, and they drew their dream. And this one girl who usually didn't participate in groups, she just was, she painted. She wanted a whole lot of black paint, and she just kind of went to town painting her dream. And so when it was over, everybody shared, and she was just like, oh, I just needed to get it out. And she didn't know what it was. She couldn't really interpret it, and I also didn't have enough time to kind of help her through that process. But she was just like, I'm not in it, but I keep having this dream, and this is what it looks like. And her just getting it out was enough for her to say, man, I feel so much better. I don't think I'm gonna have a rough night sleeping tonight. I think everything's gonna be okay. And she came back the next day, and she typically had struggled at home at night around bedtime because she didn't want to go to sleep because she was having this really scary nightmare. And the next day she was like, I slept great. I felt fine. So it makes me think, like, if I'm not willing to kind of meet them in that space because of my own level of comfort, how much of a disservice at times we'd be doing in helping patients who have, or clients who have severe trauma that's kind of like unresolved, because not a lot of people deal with it. Our research also shows that treating sleep disorders can also help. As Dr. Thompson mentioned, like having that disruption in your REM sleep is kind of like you're stopping the dream so for the potential for the trauma to be worked through kind of gets disrupted. So then we'll go to the dream report form, and it's on page 15 of your handout. And while I run through it really quick, this is another form that I did with my very first group. And it's really, really easy. I get a lot of people that say, well, I don't know how to remember my dreams, or I have kids say, I don't dream at all. And my response is always, we all dream. And so I hand them the form, and the first thing they'll say is, well, I don't know what to write about. So I encourage them to pick even a small part. You don't have to talk about the whole dream, but you can even pick just a teeny small part of the dream to kind of go through and fill out the form. And what you'll notice And I highly encourage you guys to definitely use this to kind of ease your way into DreamWork. It worked wonders for me and for people that are a little resistant. But what you'll notice is as they start writing it, then 9 times out of 10, all my kids' responses were, I remember the whole thing. I was able to fill out the whole page. And I'm like, yeah, see, that's what happens. Once you start writing it out and kind of putting it down on paper or drawing it, it charges your memory and so much more comes and you remember so much more about it. One of my favorite parts of this is giving your dream a title. And that is really powerful for a lot of people, or a lot of clients from what I've seen when they get to that point, because it's like them taking ownership. So if they've had this horrible like nightmare and they're able to kind of write about it and then give it the title, it's kind of like them taking kind of their control back of it. So any questions about the dream form? I know we kind of like ran through it. A little bit self-explanatory, but.
There was a piece on the slide about the medication. I had a client with lots of nightmares, and her psychiatrist gave her a medication that was supposed to stop the nightmares. And I didn't think that was such a good idea, but she was terrified by it. She had trauma, early childhood abuse, and she was like hooked on this thing. But that was, I mean, I don't know how you would help them give up the medication.
Because I had a similar experience with one of my kids. He had a dream where it was kind of like sleep paralysis. He was terrified and he couldn't move, and it was because of he said it was started around the time he started the medication. And I told the psychiatrist, and he did nothing with it. He kind of upped the dosage, and I was like, I don't know if that wasn't the route that I was taking. But I also felt kind of awkward because I don't have an expertise in that, advocating on behalf of can we really focus on this dream and what it's about. So I know Dr. Thompson, what were your thoughts?
It's hard to tell psychiatrists otherwise, right? I said that out loud.
What else would they do?
It's what they do, right? They medicate. And what the research is showing is that people can heal trauma through DreamWork. That is research-based. So for those of you in private practice who are saying, well, what's evidence-based treatment? DreamWork is evidence-based treatment. So I just want you to know that, especially if you have training in it, right? Remember that? That's the other part of it. So again, we've given you some tastes. You have resources. You've had a little experience with how do you stand. We talked a little bit about different kinds of dreams. We talked a little bit about how to work just little bits and pieces with dreams. How are you feeling now? Could you stand and show me how you feel now? I love this. So thank you. All right, so that was hour number 1. Hour number 2, we're going to talk about counseling skills that will help with facilitating DreamWork. We're going to do a demonstration using DreamWork BodyWork, a little bit more with the BodyWork, and then we'll do a little bit of small groups so that you can do some practice in it. How does that sound? So we'll start back up. Oh, we did really well at 1/4 after. Great. See you soon.
You thought I was what? I was. You obviously not.